Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Power of Knowing Forum's 150th journey on, on LinkedIn Live. Today we are having a discussion on resilient cities harnessing digital tech to navigate urban challenges. To discuss on this topic on our 150th episode, we have Mr. Sunil David, digital technology consultant, ex-regional director of IoT, AT&T, chairman of Intelligent Communication Group of IET Future Tech Panel. Without further ado, we will bring Mr. Sunil David on to the discussion panel. Hi, sir. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Prem. Thank you for inviting me for your 150th episode. Pleasure to be a part of this discussion.
Thank you, sir. Sir, somewhere I see, based on the topic that we are talking about today, IoT is playing a major role in what we are doing. Okay. And how is this resilient cities harnessing the digital technology to navigate urban challenges?
Right. Thanks, Prem, for that question. So, first, let me define what resilience is.
Yeah.
Now, from a human perspective, what is resilience? Resilience is the ability to bounce back from a setback, right? So, if you've gone through a setback, it could be health related, career related, anything which personal related, and the ability for you to bounce back and come out stronger, right? That is from a human perspective. So just apply the same definition to cities. So cities also have to be resilient, the ability for them to absorb and recover and adapt to shocks and stresses, right? And these come in various forms and shapes, Prem, right? So it can be natural disasters, it can be an earthquake, um, it can be floods. There
Hmm.
could be instances where there are infrastructure breakdowns, right? So the whole ability of the city to be able to come out of that and come out very strongly is what would define what is a resilient city. And technology definitely plays a big part in trying to make cities resilient. And in this context, I wanted to share some examples
Yeah.
because even the whole topic when you're talking about trying to harness digital technologies to address urban challenges, right? So this whole concept about the smart city, where
Yeah.
you're using technology, and why are you using technology? You want to make life of citizens comfortable, right? You want citizens to be able to access government services seamlessly. You
Hmm.
want to use technology to optimize use of resources, whether it is water and so on, right? And since you talked about IoT, Prem, I'll extend it further because you also are going to use analytics, you're going to use AI, you're
Yeah.
going to use cloud and all these technologies, because only when these technologies come together that you can really see value coming out of implementation, right? Now, from a city perspective, I think you talked about IoT.
Yeah.
I think a lot of infrastructure that is part of a city that can now be monitored using IoT, because you need those sensors to monitor every asset, right? It could be street lightings, using sensors to monitor street lights, wherein
Hmm.
you save on energy also, right? I mean, many times you find situations where sometimes at 6:37 or 8 in the morning lights are on, and today you have sensors which will automatically switch off those lights the moment
Yeah.
once the sun rises, right? So whether it is street lights, whether it is buildings, public transportation, so any assets which are part of the city, today you can monitor using IoT. And a lot of cities, I just wanted to give the example of how cities like Barcelona, Singapore, San Francisco, global cities, they are very good examples of how they have very early started to use all these technologies to really make sure that they're able to manage all this infrastructure, right? So managing all the infrastructure using IoT and all these other technologies, that's the first part. Second thing is, when you talk about urban planning, when you want to plan a city, uh, you're obviously going to use a lot of data. And today, one can actually use, technology like IoT, and you can actually build upon that You can actually build models or digital twins. You would have heard of this term called digital
Yes,
twin.
yes.
Yes, you can actually build a digital twin of an entire city and model a particular city, right? And here I wanted to give the example of Singapore. They were one of the first
Mm,
cities to
mm.
start building a digital twin. It's easier for a city like Singapore because it is smaller. It's a smaller country, and they have actually started to use digital twins to build a whole replica, a virtual replica of the whole city of the whole country. Third important area, Prem, and this is very, very important, is public safety and emergency response, right?
Mm.
Uh, Today, you can actually use drones to monitor, uh, people gathering at a particular location. What's the people count? You can use high definition surveillance cameras to monitor what's happening in the city, and mainly from a crime perspective to detect whether there are any criminals going around, right? Other important thing is when you talk about public safety and emergency response, um, how you are able to respond to any disaster. And I wanted to give you an example of how AT&T. I used to work with AT&T before, and I'll give you this example in the US, Prem. And this is something which is very replicable for India and any country. So AT&T, and they have this contract with the federal government,
Mm.
wherein they're called these first responders. It's called, the project is called FirstNet. So whenever any disaster happens, say a fire happens somewhere, or a terror attack, um, or any incident, a stabbing incident, or some,
Okay.
very common in the US where you have someone going and shooting people just randomly, right? So any
Mm.
of these issues happen. Uh, what happens is that these first responders, they have a dedicated network for themselves,
Okay.
uh, through which they communicate. So they have very ruggedized devices, mobile phones, handsets, walkie talkies, and they have a separate network just for themselves to be able to communicate, because they need to communicate with all the others to make sure that they're reaching that place first, and then able to respond and make sure that they're able to address whatever that issue is, right? So we don't have that similar kind of network or this kind of a concept in other countries, but this is something which definitely other countries can learn from, the
Mm.
ability to have separate network, and it is very much possible, right? So that's another area. Second thing is the whole sustainability mobility solutions, the sustainable mobility solutions, where it is all about smart mobility, the ability for using technology, to use any means of transport, one single smart card to be able to go by metro, to go by a train, or any other public transport, right? And um, uh, and when you talk about mobility solutions, let's not forget about traffic, Prem. You are in Bangalore, and Bangalore, I've been in so many times in situations where it used to take me like 1 hour to just commute a 5 kilometer distance. Just 2 days
Yes.
back, I was in Bangalore, Prem, and
Mhm.
I started from the airport at 10 o'clock in the morning, and it took me 1 hour 45 minutes to reach Koramangala for a meeting. So, and obviously, traffic congestion is a problem not just in Bangalore but everywhere in the world, and
Right.
especially in India, right? So today you can have technology that will monitor the traffic lights. You can also have what is called adaptive traffic lights, and you would have seen this, Prem, that when you are in a traffic junction, you have these timers which will tell you how long you have to
Yeah.
wait, right? Sometimes you find a situation where the timers are 120, 180 seconds, and you're waiting, and there's actually no traffic on the other roads, right? So here you can actually use technology sensors which will sense traffic in other areas, and there's no traffic. The timer, which is actually set for 180 seconds, will actually come down, so that it's called
I'll
adaptive.
I'll take one example here, Sunil. So I was in the Middle East for about 20 months, and especially in
Mhm,
Bahrain and Dubai. So
mhm,
I saw this technology there long time back. I think about 10 years
mhm,
back. So
mhm,
during the peak hours,
mhm.
these sensors would look at the number of cars available in that road,
Right.
and based on the number of cars that are available, it used to open up the traffic to
Mhm.
move the traffic out from that signal. So
Right.
we are talking that at the moment is what I can infer. No?
Yes, yes, yes. So this it's called adaptive traffic management, wherein
Okay. Okay.
the traffic management system adapts to actual traffic conditions,
Hmm.
right? And not based on set timers that are there at various traffic junctions, especially the important ones. So that's on the urban mobility side. Then the other important thing is how do you manage water and waste, Prem? I mean, fortunately, this year our monsoons have been good. I think more than our quota is what the country has received. But I don't know, you remember 5 years back in Chennai, there was a huge water scarcity in the summer, and there are other cities which have also been impacted. I think even last year Bangalore was affected, if I'm not mistaken, or this year, right?
Yes, yes,
You'll have some water challenges, right?
yeah.
So how do you manage water? And I think I wanted to give the example of how Pune Municipal Corporation, and there are
Mm,
other municipal corporations also who have developed using technology to, one is to monitor the quality of water. Second thing is using sensors and IoT gateways to be able to detect leaks in pipes, and then also using smart meters, water meters to measure water consumption. So one is using the technology to measure, to monitor quality, as well as to measure amount of water. And here I wanted to give the example of Bangalore International Airport. Prem, your own city, 52 acres of land around that whole airport area, they are actually using smart water meters. Every time in the past, before they implemented technology, every valve which was used had to be manually operated. Today, using sensors, using IoT, they can actually turn it on automatically without having human intervention. And a lot of times, water leakages used to happen, and there were also situations where people were consuming a lot more water. Now they have water meters where people pay based on water usage.
mm,
Second thing is that after they have deployed this, they started to see impact, 80% reduction in the energy cost. And I can share you this use case. It's a published
okay.
case study. And also, people who are deployed for operating these valves, they can actually be used for some other work. So they started to save people cost also. So
Mm,
Bangalore International Airport. I also wanted to give the example of a company in Chennai called WeGot. They provide solutions for residential buildings. So
mm,
smart water meters to measure consumption of water. They'll also detect leaky pipes, sensors which will measure where to monitor the pipes which have small leakages. So there, because every drop of water you lose obviously is bad. So there is technology available today to manage water. Okay, and metering of water, which is very important, because if you're paying based on consumption, then you'll be very careful in terms of how you're consuming water. Other important thing, Prem, is how do you manage waste? And here, there are technologies available which will measure, again, a lot of the cities are using this, including in India, where all the waste bins are monitored using IoT. So when the moment the bins are full, sensors will detect that the bins are full, and it will give an alert would be generated to the municipal commission, to the municipal office, and then they send the garbage trucks to come and fill it up, to come and take the bins, and then take it to the landfill. Right. So that is also available. But very importantly, Prem, what can we do to ensure that we can convert that waste into something else, say into a biofuel? Because all of this waste is actually going into a landfill, and the moment this waste goes into a landfill, it creates a separate issue, because it generates methane, which is a very, 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 very harmful greenhouse gas. Now, again, I wanted to give you the example of what AT&T did, and this is something very replicable for India also. And there are companies in India doing that. I'll come to one example later. But AT&T, in partnership with Emerson, they have built a technology wherein all the waste coming from food, from malls, from restaurants,
mm,
all that food waste, instead of going into the landfill, all of that was getting converted using a separate technology called anaerobic digestion, and converted into what is called as a slurry. And they were monitoring the fill levels of slurry using IoT, and that slurry is again through a separate process converted into a kind of a biofuel, a fertilizer, which is used. So again, it's called waste to wealth. We are converting waste
yeah.
into something else which is useful, right?
I've heard
So
about this
yeah,
pointer saying that waste to wealth. Yeah.
yeah. So, and the last example I want to give, Prem, is smart grids and energy management.
Mm,
Because again, today we don't have challenges when it comes to power. Most cities have are managing that well, but we have had instances
yeah.
in the past when there used to
Yes.
be power cuts for 4 hours, 6 hours a day, right?
Yeah.
Right from distribution of power to the transformer level, where you're stepping down the voltage and eventually distributing to the people, uh, technology can be used. One example is a transformer, and I remember working on this project 5 years back with a startup in Hyderabad,
Mm,
where we are trying to monitor the transformers, because many times power cuts happen because these transformers are not maintained. And
Yeah.
we are using IoT technology to monitor these transformers, to check earthing levels, voltage, oil, so on and so forth, and making sure that before the transformer goes bad, you can actually take you remotely try to troubleshoot, or else have someone go before the transformer fails. And that went a long way in making sure that power outage just came down. So one is the smart transformer. The other thing is Energy Efficiency Services Limited, which is a joint venture of three public sector companies of India. About 4 or 5 years back, Prem, they came up with this big initiative, a smart metering project, where they wanted to replace 250 conventional meters, which all of us use at homes, with smart meters. Now,
Hmm.
in conventional meters, and you're aware, somebody has to come from the electricity board to your home, and then they check your meter reading, and then you get an SMS or you get an email. Um, Prem, you're there?
Sir, I'm there. I'm there.
Okay, and you get a meter, and you get an alert saying that this is your consumption of units, and this is what your payment is, and this is when you have to make a payment by, right?
Hmm.
So what the ESL has come out with is these smart meters, wherein instead of having someone physically come from the EB to your home to do it, all homes would be equipped with smart meters which will have a SIM card in it, an IoT SIM, and all the consumption information of how much units that you consume at home, all that real-time information is actually going to the cloud, and it's
Okay.
having a monitoring application. And without physical intervention, you would on your app be able to track how many units you have consumed, and you can make the payment. And only about 20 to 30% of that 250 million meters have been installed right now. So the remaining have to be installed. The various providers working on it. But again, this is the big national initiative where they want to replace conventional meters that we all have with smart meters, where you can directly send the meter readings, consumption information to the cloud, right? So these are broadly the areas where IoT and all these technologies are playing a big part, Prem.
Sir, I have one question which is come from Ajay, who's our one of our podcast speaker. So this
Mhm.
is one thing, that is two-way traffic control. I worked on these platforms. India doesn't want to use such systems interesting in ICAM to traffic payments revenue collection. This is one question that has come, and he has a follow-up question here. It says, yeah, it's the same thing. I think he's okay. So any take on this, sir?
No, I think one thing is that you want to make sure safety of people, right? So and if and India, unfortunately, is the country which had the highest number of road accidents anywhere in the world, right?
Right.
A lot of them are because of poor driving behavior, right?
Mhm.
That's one of the major reasons, right? So you have to install some kind of a discipline among drivers to drive carefully. Overspeeding, going wrong side driving on the roads, right?
Yeah.
All these are very very common, right? Then breaking the signal. So and the I think the new act which came out penalizes the drivers even more compared to the past when you're
Fast. Yeah.
violating traffic. So today you have tech. In fact, I myself, I have to share this. I don't mind sharing it, but I had a situation about 6 months back. I was taking my son out for a drive, and
Uh-huh.
I was wearing my seat belt. My son was not wearing a seat belt, and very next day I got a alert, a link which had took me to the site which had the picture of my son not wearing the seat belt, and I was informed that I have to pay 1,000 rupees fine, and I had no problem paying it because I know that it was purely for my safety, because and for my son's safety,
Yeah.
right? So today you have technology which will detect all that, right? Whether you are wearing seat belt. In Chennai, it's mandatory to wear a seat belt for the
Yes.
person sitting in the front. Some cities don't have it, don't have such rules. But all this is important. I mean, I think you want to make sure that you instill discipline among drivers to collect fines, yes, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you manage congestion better. I mean, you just can't. I mean, you have been in situations where it's so frustrating waiting, going through traffic, bumper to bumper traffic, waiting at signals for a long time, right? It impacts productivity, right? So
100%.
that's what
And
my
most of the thing that, see, I think one way looking at is the Mysore Bangalore toll thing that is there, which I
Hmm.
think is in the recent news, which is AI based camera sensing that is done between the toll to toll,
Hmm.
where if you are going at a speed of 100, you're okay. If it is crosses, you come out of the toll, you get a ticket.
Hmm.
So that's the new system that has been installed. I was there last Saturday there in Bangalore, and I found the disciplined people not going beyond 100 because a huge number of fines. I think in after they implemented the system, I think they have collected huge number of fines in one day because of speeding, over speeding of 100, and you reached this one. There will be a person who's right in the toll booth to collect fines, and the tickets are so automated. Now I was looking at that piece, and even in the, if you look at in Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanams, where you climb the hill, foothill from here down to up, this sensor was done about 4 5 years back itself. You
Hmm.
had to take this route, though it is a guard section, you will have to reach with that specific time. If you are early, then they are questioned. If you are late, they were questioned. Did you stop somewhere? What happened? Any challenge and stuff like that. I think that's what you're talking about in terms of one way at looking at this technology enhancement. I think is one is that you are putting a uh, rule saying that this is the speed that you can go, and
Yeah.
if that is not followed, there is a process that is coming in for you to pay the fines and stuff, which is automated. Earlier, whether you pay it or not, now it is all getting linked to your account. Whenever there is another fine, when a traffic, the other fine that is got also is getting listed out, saying that your old fine is still pending and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, no. Ajay has got a point. He's saying that traffic department are not interested in such solutions, and that is where you need to really the leadership. I think you had one question on leadership, and that
Yeah,
is where the leadership aspect comes in because this has to be driven from the top. The leadership has important there
yeah,
to make sure that they look at the overall larger picture, right,
yeah.
and not be very myopic in their view that um, that we don't need a solution like this. So purely from a citizen safety perspective, they have no choice but to look at deploying all these technologies. It's not easy because
It's not
anything when
easy.
you want to change, and Prem, how it is.
No, I think when you want to do some changes, Sunil, it takes a lot of push to get that change. But
Correct.
I was reading somewhere where we said the seat belt, wearing seat belt was not a norm. And
Mm,
when they put saying that seat belt is a mandatory stuff, first there was reluctance in handling. The number of
mm,
accidents increased, and they felt safety of the seat belt, and that took about 20 plus years for us to say that you sit in a car and you buckle the seat belt first, then you start the car.
mm.
That's the situation we are today at the moment. So that's how I think it takes time, but now the adoption is more, is what I feel, Sunil, because
Yeah.
earlier people did not have that kind of knowledge or saying that this kind of act. Now everything is as a report for us to look at. You have number of accidents getting tracked, number of claims getting tracked, number of people, traffic lights, seeing how many vehicles have been traveled in some of the complexes, what is the crowd that is getting in is also being
Mm.
looked at. In malls you see the parking sensors being put, where the parking sensors tells when you enter the mall, you say these are the slots available and this is the floor that you have to go park. So a lot of devices have been there. That's more to look at IoT based, right?
No,
Sunil?
absolutely. And I just wanted to, since you talked about malls and even also buildings, campuses,
Hmm.
public places,
Yeah,
one area which I didn't mention earlier is how you can use IoT for smart parking.
yeah,
Because and you would have been situations like this when you want to park somewhere and you go round and round, not finding the
yeah,
parking place, right? And you waste fuel, right? You
yeah.
waste time. And today there is technology available. I know of companies which are built, including in India,
Hmm.
who have these smart parking solutions where if it's in a mall, you have sensors which are embedded inside, and using a technology called LoRa or even narrowband IoT, which is a cellular technology. These sensors would communicate to a gateway, and the moment a slot is available, you would on your app get an alert, and it will take you to the right place to park. And once the moment you park it, automatically that slot shows a red. So somebody else who wants to come would know that slot is not
I
available.
think
And it
Chennai
would.
has implemented the smart parking, I think, right,
Yeah,
Sunil?
a lot of cities have implemented it, but it is not scaled as much. It has to scale up to cover a lot more public places.
Last
Prem,
time
right?
when I was in Chennai, I was in Tinagar. where I wanted to park my car. So when I parked my car, there was this one which said, "Give me your number, sir. We'll send you this one."
Mm.
So after 2 hours, I got a message that your car is parked 2 hours here. Either you have to move it, or if you are taking the accept it, something like that. So I had to
Yeah.
accept saying that I will take some more time, and that got meted out.
Right. Yeah. So you can even have, these. There are parking areas where you can actually insert your smart card in it, and
Mm-hmm.
it will charge you for that number of hours that you are parking the car. So there is enough technology available today. One is to locate the right place where you can park. You don't waste time, and also you pay based on the number of hours that you're parking, because today that's one big challenge today. Smart
Yeah.
parking, especially in public places, congested cities. So there is tech that is available that will allow you to do that, Prem. Yeah.
So in coming to look at, see, while we do the implementation of stuff like this, how can we look at from a leadership role? How is the leadership, or what leadership qualities are essential to have a successful guide cities through digital transformation? How is the leaders looking at this for deploying in each state, or how is that adoption coming in line?
Yeah. So, Prem, see, leadership is a very, very important dimension. Now, I'll leave cities for the time being. I'll just talk about any enterprise, an organization which is
Hmm.
embarking on digital transformation journey. um, unless you have the vision coming in from the top leadership, uh, and they come up with the digital vision, and you want to make sure that every function within an organization has to align with that vision, right? So the leadership plays a, you need to have leaders who are, it may not necessarily be digitally savvy, but know the benefits of using digital technology and are willing to experiment and are willing to try out technology to see if they can create better business impact. And in fact, today I was actually in Hyderabad. I'm in Hyderabad right now. I attended one smart manufacturing summit which was happening here,
Mm-hmm.
organized by Economic Times, and they actually did one survey of manufacturers,
Okay.
um, in terms of how they are adopting digital transformation. And one key insight that came out was that more than 50% of many projects are failing
Mm-hmm.
because poor leadership support is
Okay.
not there, and because of which, projects are not taking off, projects are not scaling, and all that. Same thing applies if you look at smart cities. The dynamics are different, Prem. And we just look at India.
Hmm.
Uh, I'll just give you India as an example. The Smart Cities Commission was launched in 2015.
Yeah.
2015, and the objective of the Smart City Commission was that they have identified 100 plus cities which they want to make
Right.
smart, using technology to really improve citizens' lives and so on. Right?
Right.
Due to various reasons, they had to defer, the deadlines. There was the initial deadline which got deferred, and then COVID was another
Hmm.
factor which came into play, because of which it got further extended. But from a smart city standpoint, the whole smart city commission which came out, the way it was also constructed was that every city should set up what is called as a special purpose vehicle,
Hmm.
SPV, wherein there is collaboration between the center and the state. Okay, and that is one. And every city would have to have a CEO. For example, Chennai has got, they constituted a company called Chennai Smart City Private Limited,
Hmm.
which is nothing but center and state collaborating, and every state has to have a CEO.
Okay.
uh, a smart city company which they incorporate would have to have a CEO, and then there would be people, and then of course they report to the board, right? So in the case of cities, and especially when you are talking about center and state collaboration, the dynamics are so different. There, it becomes a little more difficult. I mean, even though you might have the CEO of the smart a particular city company wanting to really implement, there's a lot of coordination and work that they need to do to make sure that the center is also aligned, and
Hmm.
some political considerations which come into play, because you might have one party ruling at one state and a different party at the center. Then it
Yeah.
becomes, the federalism gets impacted. So that is one challenge. Second thing is, see, even in a city, you might have the you might have a very good leader, but you need people to execute, and also they also have to work with the municipal corporations of those respective, in each city, you got to work with the municipal commissioner and all that. And
Hmm.
many times, what happens is that even though you might have strong leadership, people who have to execute, they may not be willing to really align with the vision of that CEO, right? So there might be issues related to change management and all that. So in the case of smart cities, it becomes all the more difficult
Yeah.
because so many of them are so used to one way of working, and first thing that they'll ask is, why should I change when things are all right? Why should I do this? Why should I do that? That becomes very, very difficult for the leader. So when it comes to cities, while I agree that leadership is very, very important, but uh, the challenges that they have to go through, especially within the city, managing so many stakeholders, and also trying to manage the center in terms, because funding also, some of it has to come from the center, state has to fund. They also, of course, there's also a public-private partnership that comes into play. So you need to have private players involved, right? So dynamics are slightly different when you look at the city side, especially leadership, Prem.
So now, what are the see, looking at some of the common things that we see on the this one? What are some most pressing urban challenges that cities face today, and how can digital technologies effectively address these challenges? You understand, you put this in little pockets, but is there something as a challenge that we can look at where it is a pressing need for them to understand it? How do they navigate through it?
So I think some of the most pressing challenges for any smart city,
Hmm.
I think one is optimal use of resources, right?
Okay.
And water is one, because today you might have good rainfall, and we are dependent as a country. We're dependent a lot on the monsoons. We never know, a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we might have monsoons which might fail. And then how do you manage water? Because that is a basic necessity. So water is one resource. Second thing is, how do you manage energy? It's a lot of
Hmm.
it, because a lot of the power that we're getting is from the grid. They're all thermal power plants which are generating
Yeah.
coal-based power, which is obviously not good for the environment, right? And we cannot go ahead continue with this depending on thermal energy or energy-fired energy coming in from these thermal plants, and hence the need for renewable energy like solar, wind. But it doesn't come cheap. Today there are schemes where one can have rooftop solars, but those are expensive. Not everybody can afford it, right? Right. So how do you manage energy? And that's a big challenge, because a lot of the greenhouse gas emissions which are happening is because of energy consumption, especially real estate, Prem.
Hmm.
Real estate, whether you look at commercial real estate, or if you're looking at you know um, residential real estate, the biggest contributor is use of air conditioning, HVAC as they call it, heating, ventilation, and especially air conditioning. Air
Hmm.
conditioning usage contributes a lot to power consumption. And how do you optimize that, right? So energy, today we are getting oil, no problem at all. We never know, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, if the scarcity of oil, then we're going to have a big challenge, because I don't think we'll be able to generate enough non-renewable resources
Yeah.
to be able to replace, the regular power which is coming from the grid, using these coal-based power plants. So energy, how do you optimize and use energy? That's another big challenge, and we have to make sure that we use technology to do that. Third, I think, Prem, is waste, because the amount of waste that is being generated today,
Yeah.
that's a big challenge.
Big
And
challenge.
it calls for a lot of discipline among people also, because you have to be very careful in terms of how you're using resources. You don't want to waste stuff, whether it's
Yeah.
food,
I
water.
think one more point with waste management, what you're talking about, there should be a piece of knowledge which is being shared or a process put into place, because even we as people don't segregate most of the.
Exactly. Very good point.
That's
Yes.
one point. The second point is there are instances where we segregate and the collector dumps it to one place.
Uh, yeah, absolutely.
So there is that rule has to be very clear, because I've seen you give them segregated plastic separate, paper separate, wet
Yeah.
waste, dry waste separate. Now that was rule which was made, but when the collector comes, he takes everything and puts it to one truck
Yeah.
and he mixes that out. So there should be, I think, there should be something as a guideline which says waste segregation is going to be taken separately, the paper and plastic are going to be collected by a separate person. The
Yeah.
wet waste will be connected. Maybe that's a planned process that could be put in place, but it needs a lot of infrastructure and needs a lot of coordination to be done between the corporations and the collectors and the people. So I think that is one thing which we are missing, is what I feel. Sunil,
No,
what
no,
do you say?
absolutely. No, I agree. And that's where the human dimension comes in, Prem, because when you talk about waste segregation, as a, especially buildings, when you have, these bins which are there, it calls for discipline that you got to
Yeah.
segregate waste, as you said, wet waste, dry waste, and so on. And then even at the, as you said, collector level, they might just dump everything in,
Yeah.
right? So the whole effort gets defeated, right? And for them also to have the discipline to do that segregation, because they know it might take additional time, but at the
Mhm.
end of the day, it is for the good, right, of
Yeah.
the people, for the society at large, right? So
Yeah.
managing waste is a big challenge, because the amount of waste that is getting generated is increasing by the day.
Hmm.
So even electronic waste, Prem, so much of
Yeah.
electronic waste being generated, and we really need to find ways where we can build in some kind of circularity in the economy. You heard of the term called circular economy. How do
Yeah.
you recycle, right? Reuse. So those are going to be important aspects. When you look at waste, because all this waste going to landfills, generating greenhouse gas emissions, methane, carbon dioxide, very harmful for environment. And the moment your energy consumption goes up, from real estate, lot of vehicles on the road generating, greenhouse gas emissions, waste causing another issue, all this has an impact on the climate, right? Because
Yeah.
um, there was, I think, a few years back, the United Nations uh, have kept a target that they want to limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees uh, by
Hmm.
2030. 1.5 degrees from the pre-industrial era. By 2030, it has to be, they have to limit it to 1.5, and I think we might probably overshoot that. And we are seeing the impact of climate change, right? I mean,
Yeah.
freak weather incidents, um, extreme rainfall in certain places, extreme heat. In fact, I think last year they said was the hottest year ever recorded on the surface of the earth. And this
Oh.
year
Okay.
already they are saying that 2024 might probably be the year which is the hottest year. So many countries are going through reeling under heat waves. There are pockets which are having extreme high rainfall. So climate change is one of the biggest concerns for globally as well as for the cities also. So all these are pressing challenges. Um, lot still needs to be done, Prem, to make sure that we are able to optimize our resources, managing waste, and so on and so forth. Prem.
Now, I think, see, the other point that comes into picture is when we have so much of data which we are collecting from all these devices, and these devices give us a predictive analysis on each and every factor that we are looking at. But how is the data getting managed, and how is the privacy part being taken care here at a larger extent for all the data which is being collected? Is there an insight to that, Sunil?
Yeah, see, again, Prem, in India, we have a challenge, and I'm being very open and upfront with you. A lot
Hmm.
of the data that is generated, they're all siloed.
Hmm.
We need to
Okay.
integrate, for example, traffic data, municipal corporation data, right? So all of that needs to be integrated. We need to get a unified view of data, and when we get that unified view of data, and then when you apply analytics, and then you apply AI, you get the patterns, and basis those patterns, it will help you make right decisions. You can predict outcomes, and so on and so forth. So I think one biggest challenge is trying to extract data, which are all residing in silos, integrate it onto a data lake, and then you apply your AI. So that's a challenge, and that needs to be definitely addressed. Prem. Second thing is your question on data privacy, and that hopefully is getting addressed thanks to the Personal Data Protection Act,
Yeah.
which got passed last year in Parliament. Rules are being notified, and I think probably by the end of the year that would come into play, and that has all the guidelines in terms of whether the user's consent is obtained before any
Yeah.
of the data is shared, and of course there'll be penalties on companies who share your data without your consent. and so on,
I
right?
think
So
that policy which will come up on the data side is, I think we see a lot of changes happening on who's the person who has to collect the data, who's the person who has to process the data, how is the consent coming in. I think a lot of things which was freely available in India. I think what you said, right, Sunil, is that uh, we give everything, leaving our life to the guy who collects the data. Visit for a loan, you have to give everything. I think leaving your yourself, rest all is collected.
yes,
For any loan or a sim card or anything, the kind of documentation that they collect is
yeah,
immense. And that documentation, after they collect, they store it somewhere. And I was telling somebody the other day on a cyber security talk that we were having, how many people put a signature and put a date under it? 99% said no, we don't.
mm, mm,
Because somewhere I was going through where we said a check is valid for 3 months, 100 days or something like that,
mm,
if you are not presenting it. If you put a date to it, before that you have to present, otherwise it is not valid. But when you put a document, I can reuse that document in multiple places, keeping the same signature, same thing when a date is not mentioned. So even the documentation, what I understood from DPDP is that you put a date, it is valid for 90 days. And
mm,
you will have to give a consent saying that this document was processed, it was used for this purpose, and that process is done. Now I'm going to keep it for so many days as per policy, and I will confirm once I destroy it. That's the part is what I think DPDP is bringing up. Just to add
yeah,
on what you said on
yeah,
DPDP.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
but at least we have something in place now, right? I mean, that will address
yeah,
that concern, which
yeah,
is good for the consumer, because
yes,
there's always been that concern that I hope my data is not getting misused, not
yes,
going into wrong hands, and so on, right? So
yeah,
it will still not solve the problem, but at least we have an act which is there now,
yeah.
which will address all these issues concerning data privacy, and also the onus is on individuals. Also, we also have to be careful in terms of how we share data. Um, with others,
Hmm.
what is that information that we are putting in the public domain, and so on and so forth. So we have to take our own precautions as well in terms of how,
Ajay
how,
says RBAC and workflow management in city admin question. So Ajay is putting that question there.
I don't know what does he mean by RBAC, workflow
RBAC
management.
is role based access.
Role-based access, role-based access and workflow management in city. Yeah, that is. See, many cities have this integrated command and control centers. I had a chance to visit the
Hmm.
Bhopal integrated control center 6 years back. They invited me. The
Okay.
smart city CEO invited me. I went and had a look, and there they have a complete command and control center where they can see everything what is happening,
Hmm.
um, and very clear workflow defined in terms of how the whole process would work in terms of alerting and so on and so forth. Very nice structure that they built in terms of the, and other cities have also followed integrated command and control center. So you need that, especially in a smart city, from a smart city perspective, Prem. Yeah.
Now, coming to the technology that we are talking about, how is the role of AI and machine learning in urban resilience helping us or
Oh,
reshaping
huge.
many industries? How can these technologies be leveraged to make cities more resilient to the future of crisis management, specifically crisis management?
Yeah, I think in one area is flood warning systems, because Surat is an example. They have
Okay.
excellent flood warning systems. They are leveraging, they are building models, AI
Mhm.
models, wherein Surat is a place which has been flood prone, and there are
Okay.
other cities of that. Um, and you actually use all the historical data, because see, for the AI model to really be working well, you need good quality data. You need also need the past data, your ability to correlate data from multiple sources, right? And AI will definitely play a big part there, wherein basis historical data, basis data coming in from the weather systems,
Hmm.
basis data of people, the whole city itself, the demographics and all that stuff, and all that, even from urban planning, which are the pockets which are more prone to flooding, which are the low-lying areas. So much of data being generated, and that's where, when you build a model feeding all this data from multiple sources, you're able to see the patterns, and in the data, and that would help you to really get an early warning. Again, integrating with the weather system, you would get an early warning in terms of when is a likely disaster, or for example, there is an alert which comes saying that there could be a depression and a cyclonic
Mm.
storm, and you would want to be prepared for that, right? So you want to make sure that evacuation of people, especially low-lying areas, is done as quickly as possible. They are moved to shelter homes and all that. So in situations like this, AI definitely plays a part, because you are alerted in advance. See, what are the biggest benefit of AI is that one is, of course, you want to make the right decisions, but more importantly, you want to predict what is likely to happen.
Yeah.
Even in manufacturing, predicting when a machine might fail. In cities context, you want to predict before something happens. You want to take action. You want to be more proactive. And AI, and even in traffic management, for example, you're using a lot of data, and basis all the patterns that you're seeing, basis past data, current data, you can predict that tomorrow around this time between 10 to 11 there could be congestion in, say, Koramangala or
Mm.
in Indiranagar, right? And
Okay.
then you can decide whether you want to go to office or you want to work from home. So AI definitely plays a big part, Prem, in all
Yeah.
these areas, whether it's traffic management or whether, especially in the context of.
Traffic management is one thing that is the need of the hour, I think, especially in Bangalore and the urban cities that are there, which I think will
Yeah.
be helpful for us. Now, coming into the next point that I wanted to check with you is how is the collaboration between public and private sectors playing a role here in a role creating cities with resilience?
Yeah, that's very important because, see, you need funding, right? So
Mm.
government cannot do all the funding, so you need the private sector also to contribute. And in fact, the special purpose vehicle that came out of the Smart City Commission is
Mhm.
based on that model. You need center and state to collaborate. You need also private participation. So, and when you talk about private players, it could be infrastructure players who want to also be part of this. Um, and I also happy to tell you that a lot of startups were also involved in providing solutions for many of these smart city use cases. I've interacted with quite a few of these startups,
Mm.
so who have built very good solutions to address all these issues, whether it is traffic or parking and so on and so forth. But that is a very, very important aspect, because all these projects that you have to implement to solve all these challenges, of course, need technology, and you need capital, you need money to implement this technology, and that's where the public-private partnership will play a big part, to make sure that there's enough funding available to be able to implement all these projects at scale, Prem, because it is one thing to just deploy it in one part, but to scale it, you obviously need a lot of capital, you need a lot of investment, and public-private partnerships would definitely help you to get that, Prem.
Now, as we adopt to technologies, right, and we look at the cities are digitized, and what skill should the workers from entry level to senior management focus on staying relevant and contributing effective to resilient urban ecosystems? Because now, as you said, we were talking about 100 plus odd smart cities, right?
Yeah.
So how we brought the technology, we have but how is the citizens adding a role to play on this end? What is that they need to keep
Yeah,
themselves?
so every smart city initiative has to keep citizen at the core,
Yeah.
because you
Okay.
want to ensure that citizens are benefited, right?
Mm, mm,
um, and you want to make sure citizens have good access to all the government services through digital infrastructure, right? So, what is very important, Prem, is that citizens have to make sure that they are digitally literate. Okay,
okay.
so digital inclusion. Okay, that is what the word I'm trying to get. Digital inclusion, which means that every strata of society would have to be part of the digital economy, and which means that they have to have access to low cost smartphones, which are running all these applications which will allow you to access government services. Everyone will need access to internet. Today there are projects, companies are doing free Wi-Fi in certain many cities. You need
Mm,
internet access, right?
Yeah.
So two important aspects. So one is access to the devices, low cost, affordable access to internet, and you need to know, people have to know how to use and access all these applications and get, best max value from that, right? So digital literacy is going to play a very very important aspect. Even if one is not technical, uh, one has to know basic functionality in terms of how can one use an app and get the best
Yeah.
use of that app, right? So that is going to be very important. One need not be very skilled, Prem, just fundamental
I'll
functioning.
take one example, Sunil, where I one of my friend's mom was she's not a tech savvy. She was given a mobile and she started using it. So this guy had to go somewhere in Bangalore, and while he was ready to go, she knew where this guy had to go. So she checked on Google Maps and said, "Hey, don't go by that route. That is already
Yeah.
traveling." then then this guy was, when did you start looking at, you said you are supposed to, I thought there is something called as maps, you were talking on that, I heard about it and I started using it. Now the place you want to go is taking, go, don't go this route and you take that route. The
Yeah.
point what I'm trying to emphasize here is, now even the people who were not the tech savvy people are used to these mobiles with
Yes.
a lot of things that are happening. Now anybody who wants to travel is booking a Ola nowadays, Ola or Uber. Our senior citizens are well equipped to take that kind of this one and start moving it, right, Sunil? Hello. Yeah, Sunil.
Yeah, Prem, I lost you for a minute. Yeah. Yeah, Prem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so what I was telling is, yeah, I was telling is the senior citizens also are getting equipped to have this
Yes.
technology used. So that's the point I wanted to drive. Okay.
Absolutely.
Now coming to the next point is on your personal journey. What do you think? You look back at your career and a piece of advice what you have wish or you are received while starting this digital transformation, and what would you want to give as an advice to the people who are going to embrace IoT or the technologies that are coming up in the near future?
Yeah. So I think one message which I want to give to everyone is that um, you may not necessarily be a technology person. You not be a techie, but given that technology has permeated all our lives, right? Uh, One has to know how to use technology for your benefit. Okay, so you do not need to be a slave to technology. You make the
Hmm.
technology a slave to you. Use technology for your benefit. So I would urge anyone. It could be the older generation. It can be housewives. It can be people who are absolutely have absolutely no interest in tech at all. Um, you know. I would just advise them that, uh, given today's day and age, it's extremely important for you to see how you can leverage this technology for your benefit. Okay, so and it is not very very difficult, because most apps that are built today are very very intuitive. They come with very good user interfaces, so it is not rocket science. It's just a matter of time before you figure out how you can use these technologies. So that's what my message would be to them, because uh, the whole technology landscape is changing so fast. Year after year, we are going to see a lot more technological advancements, and hence, as we go to the next wave of technology, you don't want to be left behind. So, just want to give this message that please learn how to use this technology to make yourself more productive, uh, to make life easier and more convenient for you, right? So that is the message I would like to give to everybody, Prem. Before, and I have benefited from this. Of course, I am a technology evangelist, so I will always advocate the importance of using technology. But even for people who are not, technology focused or not technology folks, it is important for them to really see how they can use the power of technology to make life easier for them.
With this, I think, Sunil, we've covered a lot of ground today. I would like to summarize some of the points that I've noted to talk on what is that we've done on our 150th episode of LinkedIn today. We spoke about how the big picture about smart cities are getting transformed on the digital side. We spoke about leadership on smart cities. Then we spoke about human centric approach of tech adaptability. That is one thing. That what are the challenges that we are facing, some of things, some lessons that we have learned in terms of how the technology can be learned, how it can be implemented. Waste management is one thing, then parking is one thing that we spoke about, then climate change is what we spoke about, data and privacy part as well. Then we spoke about how AI and ML can help us build urban resilience on this one, how private and public sectors also can be part of it while they do the digital transformation. And we spoke about startups also helping, looking at how they are looking at changing the urban innovations that are coming up. Then we looked at climate change again, right? And how the workforce has to adopt to digital technologies. That is one thing that we spoke. And how are the citizens being part of the smart cities or the resilient cities getting up, and some of your pointers in terms of personal journey, how the technology has been evolved. This is what we have discussed on a brief summary to look at our session today. And with that, we would like to say it was a great session, and hope the audience have found this session valuable. And with this, we would like to conclude our session. And our session for coming up is on 1st of October. We have a topic which we're talking about EI being the next leadership journey that we are going to talk about. That's the point that we are. I am scrolling that episode are there, our 155th, 151st episode, Soft Skills Revolution, why AI is the new leadership power. We are doing it on the 1st of October at 6:30 p.m. We are live on LinkedIn Live first, and we are streaming this to all the other channels like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. With this, I think we'll see you again. Sunil, any last minute word that you want to put across on the session
No, and
on what?
I think thank you so much for Prem for inviting me for this very significant episode 150.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to compliment you and your the entire team for running these series of episodes and educating and creating a lot more awareness amongst people about technology and all that. So hats off, kudos to all of you all, and wishing you all the best for future episodes as well, Prem.
Thank you, Sunil. Thank you. With this, we would conclude. Thank you for being part of the session today. Bye for
Thank
now.
you. Thank
Thank you.
you.